In the winter of 1979, Studio 54 was the most exclusive nightclub on Earth. But beneath the dance floor, in a private basement party that only the most beautiful people could access, something happened that would remain unsolved for 45 years. A 23-year-old fashion model named Denise Katrina Matthews disappeared from that basement party. 3 days later, she'd be found in a burning Queens warehouse, her body so badly damaged that identification required dental records. And until last month, no one knew who killed her. Denise Katrina Matthews was everything Studio 54 represented in 1979. 23 years old with cheekbones that could cut glass and legs that went on forever. She'd moved to New York from small-town Indiana just 18 months earlier. Her mother, Carol Matthews, still has the letter Denise wrote home that first week. "Mom, you wouldn't believe this city. It's like someone took all the lights in the world and crammed them into one place. I'm going to make it here. I know I am." And so Denise, who'd grown up helping her mother run a failing diner in Terre Haute, suddenly found herself walking runways for Halston and appearing in Vogue Italia. She shared a cramped Chelsea apartment with 2 other models, and every morning she'd make instant coffee in the same chipped mug she'd brought from home, the one with a cartoon cat on it that her little sister Amy had given her for her 18th birthday. On the night of February 9th, 1979, Denise was exhausted. She'd been up since 4 a.m. for a shoot in Central Park, where the photographer kept making them reshoot in the freezing cold because the light wasn't quite right. But when her roommate Sylvia burst through the door at 6 p.m. with news that she'd gotten them both on the list for Studio 54's basement party, exhaustion became irrelevant. The basement parties were legendary. While regular celebrities partied upstairs, the basement was reserved for what owner Steve Robel called the beautiful ones. No photographers allowed, no journalists, just models, actors, rock stars, and enough cocaine to ski down. Denise spent an hour getting ready, borrowing Sylvia's silver lame dress that barely covered anything. She called her mother at 7:15 p.m., and Carol would later remember how happy her daughter sounded. She was laughing about how she had to use safety pins to keep the dress from falling off. She said, "Don't wait up, Mom." Tonight's going to be special. The last confirmed sighting of Denise alive was at 11:47 p.m. The coat check girl, Maria Santos, remembered her clearly because Denise had been so kind to most people, treated the staff like furniture. But Denise had complimented Maria's earrings and asked where she'd gotten them. She had this smile, Maria would tell investigators, like she really saw you. What happened after Denise descended those stairs to the basement would remain a mystery for decades, and the investigation would uncover something about Studio 54 that the owners had worked very hard to keep secret. Sylvia Hendricks knew something was wrong when she woke up at noon on February 10th, and Denise's bed hadn't been slept in. It wasn't unusual for models to crash at each other's places after late nights, but Denise always called. Always. Sylvia tried not to panic. She made coffee in Denise's cat mug and told herself her friend had probably met someone. But when she called around to their circle, no one had seen Denise leave Studio 54. More concerning, no one could quite remember seeing her after midnight, even though the party had raged until 6 a.m. It was like she just vanished, one model named Katia would later tell police. One minute she was dancing near the bar, the next, gone. And so naturally, Sylvia went to the police. The desk sergeant at the 18th precinct barely looked up from his newspaper. "Your roommate's been missing for what, 12 hours? Lady, this is New York." She probably met some guy. It would take 3 days before they'd take the case seriously. 3 days too late, because while the NYPD was dismissing Sylvia's concerns, something was happening in an abandoned warehouse in Queens. On February 12th at approximately 2 a.m., nearby residents reported flames shooting through the roof of the old Steinway piano factory that had been shuttered since 1975. The fire department responded quickly, but the building was already fully engulfed. It would take them 6 hours to control the blaze, but that's when firefighter Tommy Rodriguez made the discovery. In what used to be the quality control room, among the charred piano frames and melted ivory keys, he found human remains. The body was burned so badly that the medical examiner initially couldn't determine gender, let alone identity. But one detail stood out. The victim was wearing a partially melted silver chain around their neck. It was a chain that Sylvia Hendricks would recognize immediately when shown the evidence photos. She'd given it to Denise for her 23rd birthday, just 2 months earlier. The murder of Denise Katrina Matthews should have been front-page news. A beautiful model, the infamous Studio 54, a body burned beyond recognition. It had all the elements of a media sensation. But something strange happened. Or rather, didn't happen. The story got buried on page 6 of the Daily News and disappeared entirely within days. Detective Michael Bronstein, a 20-year veteran of the NYPD, was assigned the case. His first move was to investigate Studio 54, but he immediately hit a wall. Steve Rubel and Ian Schrager, the club's owners, insisted they had no record of Denise being there that night. The basement party? That was just a rumor, they claimed. The club's security footage from that night had mysteriously been recycled. Every single employee suddenly developed amnesia. But Detective Bronstein was nothing if not persistent. And this is where the story takes its darkest turn. Through careful investigation, he discovered that Studio 54's famous basement wasn't just for parties. The owners had a secret arrangement with certain VIPs, politicians, Wall Street executives, foreign diplomats who paid extraordinary sums for absolute privacy and absolute discretion. What happened in the basement stayed in the basement. Therefore, when Bronstein tried to get the guest list for that night, he found himself suddenly reassigned to traffic duty in the Bronx. His replacement on the case, Detective Ray Palmieri, lasted exactly 1 week before declaring it a probable drug deal gone wrong and closing the investigation. Denise's mother, Carol, flew in from Indiana, begging for answers, but was told simply that her daughter had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The case went cold. Studio 54 would close just 11 months later, when the owners were arrested for tax evasion, but nothing about the basement parties ever came to light. Denise Katrina Matthews became just another missing piece of the disco era. Her dreams of making it in New York reduced to a case number gathering dust in a filing cabinet, but as it would turn out, someone at that party had been careless. Among the evidence collected from the warehouse, investigators had found several cigarette butts near where the body was discovered. In 1979, DNA testing didn't exist. Those cigarette butts were sealed in an evidence bag and forgotten. But what they discovered next changed everything. For 45 years, they waited. Carol Matthews never stopped calling the precinct every February 9th. Sylvia Hendricks, now a real estate agent in Connecticut, still kept Denise's cat mug in her kitchen. But somewhere in Florida, a former Studio 54 security guard named Vincent Torrino probably thought he'd gotten away with murder. Technology as a way of catching up with the past. In January 2024, the NYPD's Cold Case Unit, as part of a systematic review of unsolved murders, ran the DNA from those cigarette butts through an expanded database. They got a hit. Vincent, Vinnie Torrino, arrested in 2018 in Miami for aggravated assault, was a perfect match. The investigation that followed revealed the truth about that night in February 1979, therefore revealing what really went on in Studio 54's basement. Vincent Torrino had been Steve Rubel's personal problem solver. When VIPs got too rough with the models, Vinnie cleaned it up. When someone overdosed in the basement, Vinnie made the body disappear. He was paid in cash and cocaine, and he was very, very good at his job. On the night of February 9th, according to the confession he'd eventually give in exchange for a plea deal, Torrino was told to handle a situation. In the harsh fluorescent light of the interrogation room, Torrino's face looked gray and hollow. His voice, ravaged by decades of smoking, came out in a harsh rasp as he detailed that night. He shifted constantly in the metal chair, his emphysema making each breath a labored wheeze. A diplomat from a Middle Eastern country, Torrino, claims he never knew which one had gotten violent with one of the models during a private party in the basement's back room. The model was threatening to go to the police, The confession room's recording captured every wheeze, every pause, as Torrino struggled for air between sentences. Denise Katrina Matthews wasn't supposed to be in that room. She'd been looking for the bathroom, gotten turned around in the maze of basement corridors. She'd walked in at exactly the wrong moment, seen what she wasn't supposed to see. The diplomat was gone within minutes, whisked away by his security detail. But Denise remained a witness to something that could shut down Studio 54 and send powerful people to prison. Torrino's solution was simple and brutal. He convinced Denise he was taking her to safety, led her out through the service entrance to a waiting car. She trusted him. He was security after all. He was supposed to protect people like her. The warehouse in Queens belonged to an associate. The fire was meant to destroy any evidence. Therefore, for 45 years, it nearly did. In his confession, Torrino showed no remorse. It was just business, he told investigators. She saw too much. In that world, seeing too much was a death sentence. He couldn't remember her name. To him, she was just another problem he'd solved for Steve Rubel. Vincent Torrino, now 72 and suffering from emphysema, was arrested at his Boca Raton condo on March 15, 2024. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter to avoid trial, receiving a 25-year sentence he'll likely never complete. The diplomat he protected was never identified. Those records, conveniently, had been destroyed. Carol Matthews, now 86 and living in a nursing home in Terre Haute, received the call she'd waited 45 years for from Detective Sarah Chen of the Cold Case Unit. "We found him," Chen said simply. "We found who killed your daughter." Carol didn't cry. After 45 years, she was all out of tears. Sylvia Hendricks flew in from Connecticut for Torrino's sentencing. She brought Denise's cat mug with her, holding it in her lap throughout the proceedings. She deserved to be remembered as more than just a victim, Sylvia told reporters. She was funny, she was kind, she noticed people. She had this laugh that made everyone else start laughing too. Amy Matthews, Denise's little sister who'd given her that mug, is now 67 with grandchildren of her own. She still keeps her sister's last letter, the one about making it in New York, in her jewelry box. She did make it, Amy says. Maybe not the way she planned, but people know her name now. They know she mattered. The basement of Studio 54 is now a fitness center. Sometimes, late at night, employees report smelling phantom cigarette smoke in the back corridors. They say it smells like Marlboro's Vincent Torrino's brand.